Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammāṃ Sanghaṃ Namasami. February 15th, 2020, Saturday night, Abhayagiri winter retreat, halfway through. Just started saying 20, not 2020, 2020. Interesting, the way the mind works. Last year it was 2019, but now when I talk about last year, it's 2019. It's noticing when these shifts take place and wondering if they said we say 1901, but when they were there, did they say 1901 or did they say 1901? I don't know. And then the shift takes place now when I talk about the past. It's 2010, 2011. But when I was in 2010, it was 2010. So the mind is strange. And it's springtime, early spring. We probably will get more rain. It'll go back to winter again at some point, hopefully. We haven't gotten enough rain yet. This year we've had about 15 inches. The yearly average is about 42 inches here. So, but there is kind of a springtime happening, and the mountain quails, I've been noticing the mountain quails calling, and for me that's a really hauntingly beautiful sound that brings up a perception of solitude and being in the wilderness. And mountain quails they're not like the quails that run around in big groups. They're more solitary. They have a different call, and normally they call out when it's not super cold outside, but pretty cold in the early morning time, just as it's starting to get light, and usually when it's kind of foggy and everything else is very quiet, then you'll hear the mountain quail calling. And it's just one of those experiences that gives a sense of solitude and peace. Can quiet the mind, or bring the mind into a state of peace, so making use of the environment in that way. Or there's a few of us that have been up on the ridge. There were some water tanks that needed to be put into place, and it had to happen during the winter retreat, so a few of us up there, but then noticing how quiet it is on the ridge, where when you're on our ridge, it's like, I was trying to think one day, I was by myself up there and trying to figure out why it was so peaceful and serene up there. And I think it's, again, that sense of being in the wilderness, being in solitude, and any human noise is very distant. So there's this sense of distance, being in a distant place, on a distant mountaintop, and then looking out. And if you didn't know where you were in the world, you may as well be in the foothills of the Himalayas. And it's just so. The mountains are with the pine forests. It's just so sparsely populated, and very much a sense of being in the wilderness. And here also, the other day, hearing the mountain lions calling to each other. So all the animals are very active, running around. So winter retreat is a time when we think of these different teachings and we delve more deeper into the Buddhist teachings, and there's a few different themes that have been in my mind. One is the 7 factors of awakening, the 7 factors of enlightenment. Another theme that I've been thinking about too is the Buddha talking about preservation of truth and realization of truth. And preservation of truth is very interesting because the Buddha lines out how to investigate experience. And that's connected with the first of the 7 bojjhangas, the factors of awakening, which is sati, just mindfulness. So with preservation of truth, it's asking ourselves, what can we know for sure when we look at something or read something or have some sort of experience? What can we know for sure? And how much are we reading into it? How much are we extrapolating? So like if we see something, say something contacts our eyes, the eye sense base, what we can know for sure is we saw something, we saw that. If we hear something, we can know for sure we heard that, that was the experience. But if we say, I saw that, and then we jump to a conclusion, that means this and this and this. I heard that, that means this and this and this. That's no longer preserving truth. If we're preserving truth, we might speak in a way like, I saw this, therefore it could mean this or it could mean that. And when the Buddha's talking about preservation of truth, he uses the example of a tracker who's tracking a bull elephant. And the tracker sees large footprints, elephant footprints in the forest. And if he's preserving truth, he says to himself, those are elephant footprints. There's no other animal that makes that kind of a footprint, so I can say that's an elephant footprint. However, I don't yet know if it's a bull elephant. It could be a large female elephant, or it could be some other one of, it might not be the lead elephant. It might not be a tusker. If he's not preserving truth, he would jump to the conclusion, this is definitely a bull elephant. I know this 100% for sure. So that's non-preservation of truth. But preservation of truth is saying, well, I don't know for sure yet. So he goes on and sees broken branches along with the same footprints, and then he thinks, okay, well, there's broken branches which show that it was of such and such a height, so there's more evidence that this is indeed a bull elephant, but I don't yet know for sure. It could be one of the other elephants who is just oversized, or it may have been using its trunk to feed off these branches, or it may have something else may have happened rather than just the elephant walking through the forest. So there's broken branches. That's a piece of evidence that this may well be a bull elephant, but don't know for sure yet. Goes on, there's more signs, and then eventually the tracker sees the bull elephant. Only then can he make the final conclusion, this is indeed a bull elephant. So there was a lot of evidence there, and he could say, well, probably is, maybe it is, but it is not 100% sure yet. So that's a very important quality in practice, preservation of truth. And it's the first of the Bojjhangas, the factors of awakening. That's sati, mindfulness. The other factors of awakening are the second being Dhammavichaya, which is investigation of Dhamma, consideration of Dhamma. Then there's virya, energy, effort. And there's piti, joy, happiness, rapture, passaddhi, tranquility, serenity. There's samadhi, which concentration or mental collectedness, mental unification. And then upekkha, translated as equanimity. And sati goes through all of those factors of awakening. Sati is always helpful. Factors 2, 3, and 4 being investigation of Dhamma, Dhammavichaya, virya, and piti being like energizing Dhammas, and then passaddhi, samadhi, upekkha being calming or tranquilizing Dhammas. To be used skillfully, whether the mind is agitated or overly sluggish, one can use these. But sati goes all throughout, all of them, all the time. And so what is sati? What is mindfulness? This is a not always well understood term. We're doing mindfulness meditation, where mindfulness is the path to the deathless. We hear all these things, and yet sometimes it's not so clear what mindfulness is or what establishing mindfulness is. So coming back to preservation of truth, we might be thinking in our minds, here we're meditating, thinking, I'm maybe the critical mind is coming, okay, this person's this way, that person's that way, trying to pin people down. Or I'm this way, I'm that way, I'm feeling agitated because such and such and such. But preservation of truth, I'm feeling agitated, full stop. Mindfulness, the body sitting here, I have a body, there is a body, okay, I can know that for sure. There is a body, mindfulness of the body. There is a body, it feels a certain way, pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. Mindfulness of feeling. The mind is a certain way, agitated, peaceful, expanded, distracted, concentrated, unconcentrated. Can know that for sure. But for our purposes, mostly the body, mindfulness of the body. So using the body, mindfulness needs an establishment, needs a theme. So there's virya, there's energy, and we're reminding ourselves. The mindfulness is like a reminder to ourselves to, okay, come back to what we can know for sure. There is a body. And then that might turn into Dhammavichaya, some sort of contemplation of a theme around the body. What is this body composed of? Head hair, body hair, nails, teeth, skin. Sending the mind through the body. That's mindfulness. Mindfulness puts the brakes on any runaway proliferation. This person said this, therefore, da-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. That person looked at me in that way, therefore, they're angry, they're this way, they're that way. But preservation of truth, oh, that person looked at me. That's all I can know for sure. And I can know I have a body and it feels this way. And that's like the establishment of mindfulness. What mindfulness does is when we establish mindfulness in the body, then it's coming back into the present. The body is here in the present. It's this way. It's sitting, it's walking, it's standing, it's lying down. It's very ordinary. It's speaking, it's keeping silent. It's a certain size, a certain weight, a certain age. It's just completely ordinary. It's comprised of earth element, water element, so on. It's inconstant. It's heading toward death. It heads in that direction. So mindfulness, sati, it's like using thought. We're using thought to remind ourselves to come back into the body, come back to the present. That's establishing mindfulness. And then the awareness itself is the sampajanya, is the knowing thoroughly, knowing clearly. So that's why we combine those two terms. That's sati sampajanya. And then Dhammavichaya is the consideration of Dhamma. Can be the consideration, the thinking about, using thought again, thinking about the Dhamma teachings that we've been studying during the winter retreat. That's Dhammavichaya. And trying to curb our thoughts so they're in line with Dhamma. Curb our proliferations so it's in line with Dhamma. Or even if there's some sort of runaway, unwholesome proliferation, then we can make it into Dhammavichaya by saying, oh, there was a proliferation there. I can come back. Oh, what was the cause of that? What was happening there? Oh, I can see it. There's another sutta where a bhikkhu is in the Samyutta Nikaya, where a bhikkhu is asking the Buddha, apparent here and now, apparent here and now. How is the Dhamma apparent here and now? And the Buddha says, when one has a thought of anger and one sees there was a thought of anger, that's how the Dhamma is apparent here and now. And he just gives this very short answer. And read that, and it's kind of strange. Why does he say a thought of anger and he knows there is a thought of anger? But it's the Buddha's bringing it back to not the object, but it's the awareness itself, the being aware of what is happening in the present. It's like we read the suttas for years and we hear thousands of Dhamma teachings, and still it's like, I can't get rid of this anger. I can't get rid of this defilement. But can you know it? Can you know it? Then the refuge is the establishment of the knowing. So the worldly way is to react. Is to react by either grabbing onto or pushing away. So that's the real defilement. The grabbing onto is greed, and the pushing away is aversion. The identification, that's a function of delusion. Delusion has that function of identification. So we might grab onto, push away, or identify with somehow. I have so much defilement. Identify with. Yeah. so apparent here and now. There was a thought of anger, there was a thought of greed, there was a thought of identification, there was a proliferation happening. We can always bring it back to mindfulness. And then Dhammavichaya, oh, what did the Buddha say about this? What sort of teachings did the Buddha give around this particular theme? Dhammavichaya, all the time thinking about Dhamma, and then we can link our experience with Dhamma, link our daily activities with Dhamma. Listening, something as mundane or as ordinary as walking down the hill in the morning and listening to the mountain quail and thinking solitude. The Buddha praised solitude. Or thinking just peace, bringing up the perception of peace, or bringing up the perception of Nibbana. What did the Buddha say about Nibbana? What sort of epithets did Ajahn Panyo read out the other day? The whole list of epithets or synonyms for Nibbana, the sublime, the marvelous, the wonderful, the unbelievable, the end. We can think these thoughts while walking down the hill, listening to the mountain quail. And this is one of the joys of monastic life. Virya, energy. We start to see with awareness, and we get this kind of inspiration, comes from an intuition. So we listen to all these teachings about relinquishing sensuality and striving for a higher happiness, the happiness of samadhi. And starting out in monastic life, it can be quite difficult. We're accustomed to living in a certain way, to seeking happiness through sense fulfillment, sense pleasure. It's what's driving us, what we're seeking. And we start to gain a little inkling of happiness, a little intuitive sense of the happiness which might be beyond sense pleasure, and suddenly you get this inspiration, this virya, this energy. Suddenly the whole realm of sense desire seems very small, and the Dhamma seems very vast and amazing. And these kind of perceptions can come up. It's quite interesting. And when you're practicing a lot, this suddenly perceiving sense desire, or say striving for sensuality or for some sort of success in the world, it seems like, I wouldn't say small, maybe small isn't the right word, it's like limited, incredibly limited. And then bringing up the perception of Dhamma as limitless. Or not even limitless, but trying to find the right word, trying to maybe like potential. On one side you have like trapped, bonded. Then you have, on the other side with the Dhamma, you have like a potential, and you have freedom. So that might come up, that kind of virya, or can be inspiration, energy. We can't always be inspired, and that's a feeling, and that arises and passes away. But it can be helpful. It can push us in the right direction. Sometimes we need to nudge. We need these inspired moments to be able to keep going, keep practicing, not give up, not relinquish our determination. Maybe determination could be another possible translation for virya. piti, joy, happiness. We're reading all these teachings by Prapayuto in the book Buddha Dhamma, translated by Robin Moore. And a lot of this chapter on happiness that is the theme of our winter retreat a lot of it is about extracting ourselves from sensuality and seeking a higher, more refined form and more stable form of happiness, culminating in the ultimate happiness of Nibbana, the final goal of Buddhist practice. But I like this point that he makes, which is, it's not actually saying that sense pleasure or sense desire is bad. It's not like a judgment or a value judgment. Sometimes we might feel terrible. Oh, I still have sense desire. I'm a terrible person. I'm a terrible practitioner. I'm not even a practitioner. I'm sense desire. But it's not like a value judgment. It's not a bad thing. It's only that it's not fulfilling. It's seeing the reality or the nature of it. Seen in that way, it's not personal. It's not, say, a personal character judgment that we might say seek happiness or strive after sense pleasures. If we do strive after sense pleasure, that's fair enough. It's just if we pick up the Dhamma practice and the teachings and the mindfulness meditation, then it's only natural that we're going to start to see the drawbacks of it and want to find some sort of more stable form of happiness or more refined form of happiness. It's like if you think of the happiness of a good meal, it's so incredibly fleeting, and it might even be that we have an amazingly good meal and say, what's that experience? We establish mindfulness while eating. What's the experience of finishing that meal? And where's the happiness? Where's the gratification after we take that last bite of food? It's gone. We may have a few wistful moments of recollecting how good the meal was. We might say a word or two to our fellow monks, oh, that meal was so good today. And then we're already hoping for the next meal. We just, okay, well, I won't be happy again until 18 hours from now. Then I can be happy again. So that's what it's like if we take refuge in the fine sense pleasures. You know, it's not saying like don't eat good meals. The Buddha said to brush your teeth because your food will taste better, but and it's good for your health. He didn't just say the food would taste better. He said it's also good for your health and has other benefits. I believe it's in the Book of the Fives, the benefits of using toothwoods. If anybody wants to look that up, but it's not a judgment or some sort of like I'm enjoyed that meal, enjoy my meals too much, and but it's more like if we take refuge in it, then the mind isn't bright. If we finish one meal one day and we're not happy until we get the meal the next day, what kind of mental state are we in for that period of time, just seeking and hoping for the next meal? And there's another sutta where the Buddha says about the two types of horses, and there's the untrained young horse, and he doesn't really know what's happening yet. And then there's the well-trained thoroughbred horse, and the well-trained thoroughbred horse, when he wakes up in the morning, he thinks, what work does my master have for me today? And the untrained young horse wakes up in the morning and thinks, fodder, fodder. And so it can be like that, but it's not the piti. The piti isn't there. It's not as happy of an experience. And talking about like 24 hours. So when we start to see that, we have the mindfulness, we can enjoy things, we can enjoy sense pleasures like the pleasure of a good meal. But then when we have mindfulness and we know what's happening, and we contemplate the inconstancy of it, and we see the gratification, but we also see the drawback and the escape in terms of sense pleasures, then the peace, and the mind starts to get bright, mind starts to get peaceful, but like an energetic peace, an inspired peace, passaddhi. So that's the mind starting to get tranquil, peaceful. And the samadhi and upekkha. These things, the tranquility, the samadhi, and the equanimity, those are like the three dhammas that are classed as the calming side of the seven factors of awakening. So if our mind is very too energetic or agitated, or it might get too inspired, the mind can get manic, then we need these calming dhammas, okay, tranquility, actually thinking about them, tranquility, samadhi, recollecting samadhi, equanimity, coming back to equanimity, coming back into the body, consciously calming the body. But then if the mind starts to get sluggish and tired, then we have Dhammavichaya, thinking about Dhamma, chanting. The Buddha praised chanting, chanting Dhamma, contemplating Dhamma, considering Dhamma. Is how many of the teachings of Ajahn Chah where he says during the teaching, at the end he'll say, take what I've said and consider it, think about it. Is it true or not? Preservation of truth. So say we hear or read a teaching of Ajahn Chah, all we can know is we heard that teaching, we read that teaching. But we have to try it out. We don't yet know the truth of it. We trust Ajahn Chah, we have faith in Ajahn Chah. But if we're not careful, if we're not preserving truth, we might just believe it without trying it out, without putting it into practice. So we really need to practice to know for ourselves these things. Samadhi is sometimes the Pali language is very interesting. So we usually translate samadhi as concentration in English. And I like the Thai translation, Tang Chai Man, which is like the firm establishing of the mind, the unwavering establishment of mind. Or I could think of like the collectedness, like not really focus, kind of focus, but more like firm establishing, the unwavering mind, the singleness of purpose mind. Because mindfulness, in the teachings, mindfulness and samadhi are very connected and feed into one another. The Buddha describes the fourth jhana as the final purification of mindfulness, fully pure mindfulness, and purified mindfulness with equanimity. the mind having relinquished happiness and suffering. It abides in equanimity, with full, pure mindfulness. What that means is there's sati sampajanya, so even in a state as exalted as fourth jhana, according to the suttas, there's mindfulness, which means that there's a knowing. It's not like the mind just disappears and we wake up 2 weeks later, or come to. There's a story of Luang Pu Kao. He's one of the senior disciples of Luang Pu Mun, of Ajahn Mun. So Ajahn Kao, he's really, really ardent in his meditation, as many of the disciples of Ajahn Mun were. So Ajahn Kao gained this ability to sit all night. He could sit all night. He didn't have to sleep, but he had kind of a doubt about his meditation, as is kind of a problem, where he went to Ajahn Mun and he said, I can sit bolt upright all night, but I have no memory of the experience. It's like I start sitting and then it's morning. And Ajahn Mun said, that's because the mindfulness isn't present. If the mindfulness was present, then it's going to be a different experience. You're going to be fully aware of that experience. And so there was even though most of us, I don't think any of us here have that problem where we sit up all night and there's just not enough mindfulness present. If I was able to do that I would think that was pretty amazing. But Ajahn Mun saying, no, you need to just put that forth, that little bit of turning the mind a little bit more effort, and then the mindfulness is present. For Ajahn Kao, that was a big breakthrough in his practice. And for myself, I could say I had a lot of problems with nodding for many years. And I was in denial about it also. So Ajahn Chunda, Tan Chunda would point out that I was nodding and I would get upset with him. Why are you opening your eyes during the meditation? Why are you watching me? I hope he listens to this talk. I would say, I'm not nodding. But then when I eventually learned how to detect when I was nodding, I knew I was. And it's because of a lack of mindfulness. I could start to see that. That was a kind of an insight for me, was seeing that it was from a lack of mindfulness. It was this inability to come back to the body. The mind would start. The nodding would usually start by the mind would wander off Buddha, wander off the meditation object, or not be mindful of the body, and start thinking about some train of thought, and then the nodding would start. So it's like daydreaming, and then you're literally dreaming, and you're not really falling asleep. If I was fully asleep, then it wouldn't be nodding. The head would just be down, and it wouldn't come back up. But there's some sort of half awake state that's happening in that nodding state. But mindfulness isn't present. And when the mindfulness comes back, the nodding stops. I could see that. So some people can be very willful, so they might never have a problem with nodding, but it's very forceful, so the mind also isn't peaceful, and there has to be this balance. And in experience, I started to learn that the experience of, say, meditating with mindfulness is now I can go to morning puja and the body feels very tired, but there can be mindfulness and there can be not nodding. And the meditation seems quite long, but it's also quite pleasant. So that's interesting. But there's a memory of the meditation. There's an awareness of what the mind was doing, its various moods and movements that happened during the meditation. But because mindfulness was present, then I can know that, and then I can use Dhammavichaya. I can go out from the meditation and change postures, do whatever I need to do, and the Dhammavichaya can be considering, contemplating, what was happening in that meditation. So these things become connected. There becomes a continuity, and then there's that interest. There's a very strong interest in what was happening in the meditation. Why was the mind doing this or that? And then there's the critical mind that comes up, it's because I'm a hopeless case. But that's not preservation of truth. Preservation of truth is this is happening in the mind, in the present. It's not this is happening, therefore I am this, I am a hopeless case, I am, I've always been this way, I'll always be this way, etc. Okay, coming back to mindfulness. Okay, that's the mind being critical. That I can know. That I can know for sure. And this is in this way the holy life or the practice, the life in the monastery can become quite enjoyable, quite wonderful. From the outside, like, what are these guys doing? This is like the most boring thing you could imagine. But from the inside, it becomes quite enjoyable, quite interesting. Can be. Not always. Not always. But we start to learn to work with mindfulness. That can be quite enjoyable. It's I was remembering one of the discussions after the readings was Ajahn Chah talking about how much he suffered in the practice, but then he said, "But I really loved it." And it's like these type of spicy leaves that they eat in Thailand, and it's like your nose is running and you're crying, but you just can't stop eating them because they taste so good. And so the practice can be like that. If there's mindfulness, it can be enjoyable. If there's a lack of mindfulness, or we just allow the mind to flow downhill like it's always done, then yeah, there'll be times when it can be pretty miserable. But even then, even after those times when it's miserable, it's like we can come back and kind of chuckle at ourselves, like, oh I lost it again. So just be lighthearted about it. I think it's one of the dangers is becoming too heavy, too self-critical, too judgmental, too heavy-hearted. So we're looking for a happiness that's beyond sensuality, and yet Prapayutta is saying, yeah, but even stream enterers and once returners can still partake of sense pleasures or even seek sense pleasures and make use of them in a wise way. It's like listening to that mountain quail. That's a sense experience. That's a sense pleasure. It's a very refined sense pleasure. Being up on the ridge and looking out over the mountains, that's the eye. That's the sense base of the eye. That's a sense experience. And feeling the light breeze and listening to the animals, and that's a sense experience, but it can point to something beyond the sense experience. It can point to the solitude of the mind. So equanimity is a very important Dhamma. Sometimes in the old translations, it can be translated as indifference, which seems kind of cold and callous. And equanimity, the Buddha taught that what causes the mind to go into equanimity is the contemplation of kamma. So sometimes we can get really worked up about the external world. But when we contemplate kamma, I am the owner of my actions, the heir to my actions. A lot of what I'm experiencing and my habits are based on the past actions, past ways I've conducted myself. And others are in the same boat, heir to their actions, born of their actions, related to their actions, abide, supported by their actions, of whatever actions they will do. Of that, they will be the heir, they will experience it, not me. I experience the results of my own actions, and I don't experience the results of any of your actions. And you don't experience the results of my actions. We all experience this ourselves. Actions of body, speech, and mind. Nobody else except us is going to receive those actions. And then we might think, if we have Dhammavicaya, we might think, but the Buddha said not self, who's experiencing this? And that's another Dhamma talk. We're not going to talk about that tonight. So these are just a few thoughts of just preservation of truth, linking it up with mindfulness, coming back to mindfulness of the body, and investigation of Dhamma, consideration of Dhamma, energy, joy, tranquility, samadhi, upekkha, equanimity, just some things, some food for thought this evening. So I'll leave it there for tonight.